Alrighty. Hello, everyone. I just want to say a warm welcome to Ola Gjielo. Thank you for joining us here at the Larimer Chorale. We are honored to be talking to you ahead of our concert.
Thank you so much for having me.
So Ola, we have performed a number of your compositions over the last 6 or 7 years. Song of the Universal, Luminous Night of the Soul. We've taken the ground on European tours with us, always with great response and audiences really loving your compositions. We've done the Holly and the Ivy at Christmas a couple of times, I think. And so many folks in our choir, it's a symphonic choir of about 100, 120, 125 in good times, really love your music. And so they were thrilled when I chose to put the Sunrise Mass on our concert. We were supposed to actually do the Beethoven Missa Solemnis.
Wow.
I know. We have an anonymous donor, and we were set to go, and we were still wearing masks in rehearsals. We're still distanced. Nothing would make making the Missa Solemnis coming to life more difficult than where we've been. And so substituting the Sunrise Mass and sort of using it as a foundation for a concert of healing for the community has really worked well.
Oh, wonderful.
In the piece by Kira Rugen on your website and in your own words, you've talked about the Mass taking a journey for both musicians and audiences from places of unknowing and mystery to one of self-acceptance and peace. I think for the members of the chorale, they've seen the last 2 years in the pandemic so full of angst and turmoil and upheaval. I think they see sort of the gritty nature of that third movement, the city, as their lives the last couple of years.
Wow.
And then a real sense of healing in the ground, in that Pleni sunt Celi melody. And you really set that apart from the rest of the Mass in compositional terms, didn't you?
In what sense do you mean?
Just in the way that you conceived the choral parts, the accompaniment more like doubling the voice parts than providing texture around and underneath.
Oh, for the ground, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. Really, just that I wanted to end it with a chorale, basically. So you make it very homophonic and not really much polyphony going on at all, because I wanted the Mass to end with a feeling of groundedness, and it's literally called the ground. And I think, to me, the chorale is sort of one of the most grounded expressions of forms of music. And I think, there's no coincidence that Bach would end all of his cantatas with a chorale, because it has that incredible, it kind of brings everything together into this one chordal sort of expression, and it's like a brick, it's very solid, and that's what I wanted to end the Mass with, from having started in something that's way more sort of spacey and just kind of floating, very cerebral, right? And I wanted to become more and more solid and grounded throughout the Mass.
We discovered when taking it on tour that the ground in and of itself is a really moving composition for people to experience, with that beautiful modulation in the middle and the way that it expands and opens up. But I think our singers are feeling it even more, preceded by the city and by Sunrise and the more up tempo and dissonant aspects of those previous movements.
Exactly. That was the intention. Yeah, for sure. That having gone through all of that sort of roller coaster of sort of peacefulness and drama and all that kind of activity, and to sort of I was hoping that the effect will be even stronger at when you arrive at the ground, having gone through all of that, a lot of music.
Yes, yes, indeed.
Mm.
Heather.
So speaking of roller coasters, the last 2 years with COVID have been so difficult for both our choir, the nation, the world, and for all music ensembles. Have you experienced, like, what have you experienced as a composer, and how are you dealing with that? Because I know, like, your assistant mentioned that a lot of your schedule is normally focused on traveling, and that was obviously brought to a halt. How was it an altered experience for you in your line of composition?
It was probably quite a bit less than for a lot of other people, as I'm not a touring musician, right? So so it didn't change that much in that sense. I kind of already started cutting down a little bit on travel even before the pandemic, just because I was just kind of going all over the place, and which was wonderful, and you get to meet all these people and singers and conductors and audiences, but it started to kind of take away a little bit too much of my composing kind of flow, because you're always in and out, and it really takes some stability and kind of equilibrium, at least for me, to be able to compose effectively. So so I already kind of cut down quite a bit on that, just to focus more on just writing. So so the difference wasn't huge because I already worked at home anyway. I mean, I could kind of work anywhere. If it's a hotel room or it doesn't really matter, as long as you have a computer and maybe a keyboard, So I think the changes were more, emotional, and especially in the beginning, and especially in New York City, where it was just so horrible. And just, yeah, I'll never forget it. Especially the first few weeks were just it was so scary, and so sad, what was happening, and you couldn't believe it, So it definitely affected my composing for a while. Just it was hard to write, and to concentrate, and yeah, especially in New York, I think, because you felt kind of so trapped, and it was everywhere. But eventually you start to settle down. You sort of, it's still horrible, but you start to get used to and adapt to what's going on, and so after that, it's been fairly similar to what I had before, just even a lot less traveling,
Have you written any pieces as a result of the pandemic?
Not really. But that's sort of, I never really write pieces that are connected to really what current events or what's going on. I always try to kind of separate it from that, and even from my own life. Like I never really let my own life sort of seep into the music, because I always wanted it to be sort of bigger than my little problems, and I want it to be something that's hopefully comforting or inspiring or uplifting, and so I try not to get too sort of bogged down in yeah, just my own life or politics or anything that sort of distracts from that, and those things are very important to me, or politics or whatever, but I just always wanted to keep the music as a sort of a safe haven from all of that, and but there were a couple of pieces that I wrote for something called the Acjc Alumni Choir. It was a commission sort of in the middle of the pandemic. I wrote two pieces, so in 2020 and 2021, I think. And they commissioned two pieces with piano and oboe. And in those two pieces, I really wanted to write something very simple and comforting, you know, because I don't, certainly that was what I needed at the time, and you know, something that was very comforting, basically. So those are called Lux Beata Trinitas and Iam Sol Recedit. So we'll publish those in a few weeks. But so yeah, that was kind of the only way that is sort of it did affect it a little bit, you know.
Sure. But I want to maybe ask just a couple of compositional questions, or the way that the piece was conceived. So in your writing about the use of the traditional Latin Mass text, but not really being how you would say it, not really being directed by the intricacies of the text, rather maybe more by harmonic and symphonic textures. Do you still find yourself using the Mass text to create the melodies, Credo in unum Deum, for instance? Is that how you would come up with that melody, by mulling over those words until melody appears, or vice versa? Or
I think it I mean, it's 15 years since about 15 years since I wrote it, so I can't really remember much of it, the actual process. But I think in this case it was definitely a lot of both, and sort of depending on the material. So because obviously with the spheres, the first movement in the beginning obviously is not, you know, about the text itself, because you can't really hear the text because it's so like spread out and in different layers and stuff. So that's almost more about the sound and the meaning of the sound, you know, but obviously inspired by the sentiment of the text, you know. But the words themselves are kind of used more for the harmonic motions, you know. Whereas in the Credo, the city, for example, that is definitely much more just governed by the text and more syllabic in that way, you know. So so it really depends on the material, how sort of kind of, what's the word? Kind of free flowing the music is, or more syllabic, you know.
sure.
Yeah.
One of the, I was just working on the score this afternoon, and we have rehearsal tonight. You know, and you speak a little bit about an homage to Britain with some of these soft amen coda sections that you have, and you were just speaking about Bach. The way that you set the Et Resurrexit in the Credo runs counter to many examples in music history. Bach's, Haydn, Rossini, and it would just, Vivaldi. The list goes on and on. I find it really incredible that at Resurrexit, it's almost a sunrise and sunset in and of itself. As at Resurrexit Tertia Die, all of that, everything rising chromatically, and then coming down for Jesus to sit at the right hand of God. I think it's really masterful writing. It's incredibly difficult for the choir.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it is. It's awkward to sing because it has all that kind of chromatic motions going on, and yeah, I can see that. But yeah, I think I just wanted it to feel like it rose from something, I guess because Resurrected often is just very triumphant right off the bat, right?
Yep.
And which could be obviously thrilling with a lot of these amazing Resurrections that are out there. But yeah, I like the idea of it's really starting from kind of nothing and just has this kind of mysteriousness to it, and it's really rising and rising and rising, and then kind of once it culminates, it just sort of calms down again,
Yeah, it's really powerful, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah, Heather.
Yes. So much of your work uses the choir to create the symphonic sound that's much like a full orchestra. Why do you enjoy writing for the human voice as opposed to the stringed instruments?
Um, that's a good question. I mean, kind of my favorite is the combination of both. You know, I love the combination of voices and strings. It's just such an incredible combination of of um, of forces, I think. And but but yeah, I guess I often in my a cappella music as well like to sort of try to create a sound that's almost bigger than the sum of its parts in a way. And I guess because I just generally just really like a big symphonic sound, and I like music to feel immersive, you know, something that envelops you, you know. And that's probably partly from my love of movies as well, and movies and television, and which is an extremely immersive, maybe the most immersive experience in the arts, you know, especially in a movie theater or something where you just completely immersed in it. So I think that's partly why I sort of look for that in to emulate that in my music as well.
Did you attend one of the immersive Van Gogh exhibits?
No, was that in New York City?
It's traveled all over the world, I think. We had one here in Denver. Maybe it's still here, I don't know. But I could very easily imagine your music in an immersive environment like that, with screens on four sides of you. I mean, it's really fantastic. Your music would work beautifully in that
Nice.
setting, I think.
Nice. Yeah, I heard about that, but yeah, I never had a chance to go, unfortunately.
It was quite powerful and beautiful.
Wow.
And it was different music. It was diverse music from
Right.
different sources, but
Right.
it could be done easily, I think, with a unified source. Are you thinking of more large scale works for choir and orchestra?
Yeah, always. It's again, yeah, definitely one of my favorite things to write for is the combination of choir and orchestra. It's sort of the the kind of the ultimate palette to me in a lot of ways. You know, you can do anything with that, you know. Yeah, I mean, we did publish a piece called Dreamweaver a few years ago, which is not as long as the Sunrise Mass. I think it's about 20 minutes, I believe. But it has some of the same kind of very cinematic sort of scope to it, you know. And a lot of this sort of going from the very lyrical to sort of very epic and dramatic stuff. But that one is very different. It's based on a Norwegian folk poem called Dreamweaver. And so, but yeah, there are definitely similarities between those two pieces. And then I'm writing a longer piece, I think next year, for DCI&Y commissioned, that will premiere at probably Carnegie, I guess, in a couple of years. And so that will be my next sort of major choral and orchestra work. I think it looks like we're also going to base that on something Norwegian, where I grew up, and maybe one of the fairy tales, folk tales. There are some amazing ones out of Norway, so that might be what we're doing.
Very nice. I attended Luther College, and Luther College is where the National Norwegian American History Museum is.
Yeah.
And many of my friends have staunch Norwegian roots, and they sell. In fact, we had Lefse at rehearsal just a couple of weeks ago. One of our Norwegian singers brought Lefse. So
wonderful.
that's a little bit of an immersion experience for us. So
Exactly.
it was great.
Yeah, I went to Luther years ago. I loved it.
Yeah, me too. Well, listen, we don't want to keep you too long. Thank you so much for giving us just a little bit of insight into the piece and offering so freely of your time.
Absolutely, my pleasure, and thank you so much for doing the mass. It's wonderful.
Our
When
pleasure.
is the concert?
Next week, Thursday and Sunday.
Thursday and Sunday.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And those are in churches, or
they're in First United Methodist Church up here in Fort Collins.
Wonderful. Fantastic. Well, yeah, thanks so much again, and it was great to talk to you guys.